They understand that costs are increasing and end of the day, it's a business. Everyone has to survive. But then it's also customers, and customer trust us. Yeah. So it's a trust game. In the end of the day, it's not just number game.
But I hear you touching on, I think, a very interesting point. And I think in all the podcasts I've done so far, this is the first time we're touching upon the ethical part of pricing.
I think in the past year, we're overly focused on making a lot of systems in place. Whatever tools we are creating, from elasticity, from value chain, from value-based pricing. But we all know most of them are not being as successful as it could be. Why? Because salespeople are unable to use it in the end of the day. When we implement some tool, for them it's just another tool. Don't just make a design without their involvement. It's a time we take change management very seriously, because 70% of projects get failed. It's a huge number. Imagine the money we are losing just because of change management. The world order is changing. We are moving towards multipolar world. We all as a companies need to be ready for the crisis for a while. We have to accept the realities. Make sure that we have hedging for a lot of things we need, making sure that we have contracts in place for a lot of things, and we also have some kind of forward-looking mindset.
Hello, good day, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the Price Talks podcast. Today we talk with another pricing specialist, as we of course always do. Ravneet, I would like to welcome you to today's session and introduce yourself to the public.
No, it's a pleasure to be a part of this series. I am Ravneet. I am working as in corporate from last 14 years now. And out of that, it's been close to 10 years accidental coming into pricing world. I think most of us somehow get to know later where they are. And in the last 10 years, I really have got a chance to work with various companies, starting from British Telecom. It's based in London. And then I have been working with a company called RHI Magnesita. It's an industrial B2B company from last close to 6 years now.
That's a good journey, and I think a well-established profession. And I think, as you said before, and I'm kind of curious in it, and I always ask all my guests here in this podcast, nobody woke up one day and was like, yes, I'm going to be a pricing specialist or a pricing manager. Can you tell me a bit about the journey? How did you come in contact with pricing, and when did this awaken in you? You're like, this is what I like doing.
To be honest, I basically got serious about this pricing and commercial excellence world when I was doing my master's while working actually around 2014. I did my master's in international business. And at those times, people were speaking about how pricing is becoming more and more important with how the world is changing. Yeah? And then I personally then look for some kind of jobs like this. And then way back in 2016, I enter in the pricing world. And my first role was to really understand the basics like cost plus, value-based, market price, and all those things. But at those time, people were still talking about value-based pricing, which we are still talking right now. Yeah. And then, to be honest, at that time when I joined, it took me some years because, before COVID, pricing world was quite different, even though humans have been working on pricing since centuries, but still was new for us. And then somehow after working for years, you start to enjoy the process. You start to like the challenges. And especially after COVID, unfortunately, world has been quite unstable. But I think on the positive side for pricing, it becomes more important. Yeah, the unstable world we are living, the more it becomes challenging and the more I started to enjoy because of the way economies are moving. And then this is how I call ourselves an accidental pricing professional. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And I think I fully agree. Also, from my perspective, I saw a massive shift happening after COVID. With everything that happened, pricing became really important for most organizations. And of course, the more volatility there is in the world, the more pricing becomes a subject within organizations. So I do understand where you're coming from. Just interesting. So you said from your master's, you actually already got the feeling and the understanding that pricing is important, which I think is quite early. If I talk to most pricing professionals, they either came from a consulting perspective or management consulting, or they come from an analytical perspective or sales. But you're actually already from your study. So was there any specific professor or anything that mentioned something that you were like, this is going to be my field?
Yeah, actually, you get different subjects and you have to choose some kind of project to work on it. I remember one of the professor was talking about value-based pricing. Yeah. I mean, somehow as a humans, we understand the logic value-based pricing itself is saying, but when someone tell you to understand the mindset behind the value, then you start to challenge each and everything about your life. Yeah, and then you start to create value in everything of your life, huh? And somehow that was a trick point for me. And then I remember she gave me some books to read, and at those times there were very less books on pricing, but still there were some books. And then I read something around it, and then it was a click for me to really deep dive on this subject. And then I end up doing one project, especially on the pricing specific to the market realities. But again, at those times, things were very stable. Huh? All the companies were changing pricing once in a year. So it was not so exciting, but I think there were certain things was exciting for me, that how something can be linked to the world. And for me, economies and macroeconomics were always interesting point. And then when I see something is a mix of geopolitics, macroeconomics, business, so it was a very good mix for me to pursue this career.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, and that's actually very good to hear. And thank you for taking us on the journey, the beginnings of your
Yeah.
first steps in
Yeah.
pricing. And Ravneet, one of the first questions I always want to ask is: we are never too old to learn, and we can always learn from each other, and we learn by making mistakes. So going to that first question for me, what was one of the biggest mistakes you made yourself as a pricing specialist that you want to share with the other listeners so that they can learn from the mistakes we all made to not make the same?
I think I remember when we had this COVID crisis. I mean, no one was ready for it anyway. And when it happened, as all the companies, we become super panicked and super aggressive to pass on the cost impacts to the customers. I think from the cost point of view, I think very less companies were ready for it to forecast how is the impact. And then we also end up making a mistake to simulate some numbers in my own ways, and then we end up having a very worst case kind of scenarios because people were panicked. And then I remember that we end up losing a lot of volume. I mean, we were sure that we need to lose some volume to make sure that we get some cost passed through, but I remember that we end up losing some major customers, which we never been able to get back, because somehow it's also a trust factor. I mean, they understand that costs are increasing, and it's end of the day, it's a business. Everyone has to survive. But then I always say that it's also customers, and customer trust us. Yeah. So it's a trust game. In the end of the day, it's not just number game. And then when some customers see that some companies try to take advantage of all the crisis, which is happening almost now more regularly, then it's not ethical. And then we found it later that we somehow could be more ethic driven company than just number passing on. And that is why we learned the lesson. And whenever some crisis happened, we wait and watch, and we always make sure that the numbers are making sense. But then always make sure that what you are trying to ask from the customer as a surcharge on top of your prices has to be fair, and making sure that you have all the arguments to prove it in a way or other.
And but I hear you touching on, I think, a very interesting point. Since most people I talk to within pricing are very commercially minded, right? And I think in all the podcasts I've done so far, this is the first time we're touching upon the ethical part of pricing. Um, of course, there is this famous quote of "never waste a good crisis," which I've heard way too often in pricing. So if we talk about ethics in pricing, what are few of the basic rules you say people should take into consideration?
Don't overcharge. I mean, I understand that you have to make sure that you don't lose the profits, and in the end, it's a business, but there should be some kind of upper limit. I mean, there should be some kind of numbers which make sense. We know right now we have energy crisis, which is almost coming in, but we cannot just charge 1,000 euros on top. We know it will be something, some numbers, but there should be some limits. It happened to me personally actually recently. I was back to my home, and then in the Middle East crisis, for a ticket of 1,000 euros, I will not put the name of the companies. I saw some flights were charging almost 7,000, 10,000. I mean, guys, I mean, okay, we understand the problem, jet fuels and all the crisis, but the numbers show the ethics for you. And next time you will be more careful flying with them or using their services as a normal business. And once trust is lost, I think there are other companies who can take it in a better way.
Yeah, true, and I think it's a very fine line to read. I would also say there is the willingness to pay, and let's take the Middle East crisis as a situation. There are a lot of airlines that are not flying
Yeah,
through the Middle East right now,
yeah,
so there's a small fleet that is still doing it. So they're asking the premium price, and they have the demand for it. And people are paying those 7,000, 10,000, fifteen
yeah.
thousand euros for a flight. So in that sense, just without blaming or saying any company names, your statement here would be from your perspective as a pricing specialist, you would say, don't do that because if you do it for 4,000, it's still profitable more than enough. Although you could charge 8,000 and the willing to pay might even be higher for some people, but stick to those 4,000 because of the ethical situation. Your people are in hardship and you can help them and while still making your profit.
Exactly. I mean, believe, at least in Europe, there are some rules behind it. It's illegal, by the way. I mean, people don't really speak about this in a very open forum, but somehow, even though we work in pricing and we understand the background logic, there should be some kind of control mechanism to make sure that I mean, it's an open market, pricing in an open market, and it's always demand and supply. We understand, but still there has to be some way around to control this a little. I mean, I don't know it's good or bad, but this is my personal understanding that somehow, especially the more the world is getting into crisis mode and we don't see it stopping, we know the reason. We are having a world order shift right now, and this is only growing to grow more. And then businesses are getting into this mode to use the crisis, which I believe we all need to think about how to make sure that we put some kind of ethics in place that we do can do a cost pass through, but don't do over the line. Yeah, we always have to keep a balance.
Yeah, no, I think it's a valid statement, and I would say I would argue there is a difference as well in depending which industry you're active in, right? Is it the luxury industry? Is it basic needs? I think most countries can relate to housing prices. You can also relate to gas prices right now. I think going up everywhere around the world. We have flight tickets. There is a question there to be asked. At the same time, I also do think a lot of organizations now, from a manufacturing perspective, to wholesale, to retail, all the way, there are massive cost increases because raw materials go up, gas prices go up. So increases are to be expected. So I do understand as well that prices go up. And yeah, every organization likes to get a bit out of their chain, right? Not many of them want to absorb that full wheat. And in the end, it's the customer that decides what the value is they are willing to pay for a product. So who is the best in that value communication if we go about it, right? So that you
Exactly.
get if you would have bought that ticket for 7,000, would the service on that flight be worth it that you got or not, right? So I think that's a question to be asked.
Yeah, I agree with you the value, but also sometimes you have no other option.
True. Scarcity,
Yeah,
fully agree.
yeah. So the business sometimes take advantage, which from the business point of view we understand. But again, I am trying to open this topic to let people think about it. That that we need this right now at least.
Very valid point. Do you also have examples where ethical pricing has been applied well or properly? Do you know anything of that where you say like, hey, this is something where I can see it's been applied properly?
I mean, in my experience, I mean, we have been having a lot of crisis, yeah. So in our business, sometimes we get raw material crisis because of different situations. I mean, over times, after learning the lesson, I can tell you that we always make sure that we have some kind of upper limit that we need to make sure that we don't overcharge after that. So we need to keep a balance that we don't lose volumes, yeah, also for the volumes, but also to make sure that we are not only passing through, yeah, we are trying to make some profit as a business, as is a way, but also making sure that we don't go over of it. Yeah, so this is how we make sure that we are following the ethics, but also making sure that we are following the trust of the customers.
Yeah, clear. Thank you for that. Another thing I wanted to discuss with you, and I think you probably can vouch for that as well. I would say pricing is a journey. It's a whole process to really get to a mature stage. Many organizations I talk to, I see in my day-to-day life, a lot of listeners from this podcast as well probably are still working with the good old reliable Excel. And that's a fair point. It's a very good tool. It's working for a lot of organizations and it has been doing the job for over 20 years and it has been doing it well. So I do understand that. But what would you say if you want to start professionalizing your pricing? So you come at one point that you feel like, as you said, with the raw material crisis or other things happening where you need to be able to be more flexible and more adaptive with your pricing, or you need to want to use more models like price elasticity or sensitivity or competitive pricing, you name it, etc. At some point, it probably your Excel sheet becomes too robust, so too much details in there. Nobody really understands anymore what's happening. So you want to make the next step in your pricing maturity. What would you say in that pricing maturity process, if you go through these steps? What are the most common made mistakes?
It's a very good question, Roy. Actually, yeah, and actually, it's the need of an hour right now to understand that we pricing people or RGM, as a overall, I think in the past year we're overly focused on making a lot of systems in place, which we need. We need to make sure that we follow the pricing governance, whatever tools we are creating from elasticity, from value chain, from value-based pricing. But we all know, I don't have the fixed percentage, but most of them are not being as successful as it could be. Yeah. Because why? Because salespeople are unable to use it in the end of the day. So we were too focused on system creation. I am a strong believer of system. We need rules, we need proper governance, and that is why we make sure that your salespeople are using it. But somehow we miss the point that what salespeople really need. We are not in the front; they are in the front of customer. In the most of the cases, yeah, I hear nowadays pricing people are also going for negotiation. That's a different story. But as an overall, I want to tell that now is the time that we understand the challenges first from salespeople, try to sit and try to talk to them more and more, and try to create some system out of it, because we have endless Power BI reports now, endless systems, endless value-based pricing. Until they don't understand how to sell that value, on which parameters they have to sell, it's of no use. Yeah. And I mean, I hear often from a various people that they have been trying to implement value-based pricing mostly, which is a hot topic from so many years anyway. But until the value selling by salespeople is not being done on whatever parameters you have set, there is no point. And this happens to me recently as a personal story. I was at one location to train about pricing to the salespeople, and I'm telling you, Roy, since so many years we have been working on value-based pricing, they had no idea for and where to check when they are in front of customer on which parameter they have to sell value, meaning they will still work on cost plus. I'm not blaming them. They are doing their level best. They're not only handling pricing, they're handling logistic issues, geopolitical issues. They are in a mess. But we need to talk to them and be in touch with them to understand what they need, meaning the human touch. Again, tools are there, but don't miss the real stakeholders. I hope I summarize well. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I can't agree more with that.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very valid point, and you're not the first one in the series to point that out. And I would say then basically what you would say is don't start from a pricing perspective, but bring it back first. Start with your salespeople. Gather all the feedback they get from the customers. Gather they are the ones dealing with all the customers, right? And bring that back, and then see what is the added value, and then look into what's the value sell there. And then also train your salespeople to be able to tell that story instead of getting lost in a loop of your data feedback all the time without human interaction and saying there should be a 2% plus there, a 2% minus there because the data says so. But make sure that your salespeople understand it as well and be able to bring across that message.
Exactly. And also on the both sides, sometimes they probably will not understand what we are doing actually. Sometimes they ask us, what do you do in pricing actually?
Yeah.
Really, some salespeople really have this question sometimes, and we have to go to the basics then, that we can do these, we support these, we work on these, because they still think sometimes, okay, we have the cost, we add the margin on top, markup on top, and sell in the market, and we are still there in some regions. We have to accept it. Sometimes we don't accept it. I'm not saying that value-based pricing is the need of the hour. It is, but we have to also keep a balance. Sometimes we have to sell on cost plus, sometimes we have to sell on value-based, sometimes in a different way on a market price. But the idea is that once we have an idea, once we are working on something, involve them, hear them, not when you're already making a tool and then going to them and tell them, guys, we have this, and then they will tell you that, okay, how, okay, we have another tool in place, and it will depend on them as a human friction to use another tool, which because they have other 5 tools to use. So I know they're busy, but try to involve, try to find the right mind there. 1% or 2% can change the entire mindset if someone is trying to follow it. You don't have to ask all of them to use it. Just find one person who you think have the influence, who has the right mindset, and he or she will be making sure that other you will use it until this person is ready to use it. This is how I feel.
Yeah, I think makes sense. And one of the things I've seen happening in the past with the experiences we have is that indeed one or two salespeople that are willing to take this up, and then people see that they are overperforming, gaining better margins, getting easier sales, and then the rest will follow because they see the success. So I agree, and I can only fully subscribe to what you're saying is the importance of having sales involved in the process because in the end they are selling your product, right? And if you don't know why you're charging an X amount for a product or a service, they won't be able to bring that story across, and you will completely lose the touch with your customers. So thank you for that part, Ravneet, and the clarification on top of that. And I think it makes sense to hear you say involve sales in there as well, and get everybody on board, so it becomes a together decision instead of one person decides to do something and it needs to be executed. If I continue on that, if you would say in all those years you have been doing pricing and you have worked with a different organization, is there a defining moment or is there a specific point that you felt like in your pricing journey you feel like, okay, this really made me look differently at price setting? So I already heard you saying before you were inspired um, by value-based pricing and that made your thought process to look at life differently. We had the COVID, which made pricing differently. Throughout the process, throughout your career, were there more of these moments that shaped your pricing?
So if I understand well, you would like to understand what other times I feel that pricing is basically a major parameter for the interest, or how would you put it?
Yeah, are there any events in your pricing career that made you like so for example, one of the things I can think of is we see AI popping up
Yeah.
everywhere now, which makes analysis a whole lot easier. And I can understand that from a pricing specialist, you could look at it and be like, hey, this is very interesting, and that's something which might shape how I would look at pricing. But another perspective of that might be, well, we do not have the data in order, and this only will speed up the process of making wrong decisions because the basic data is not in order, right? So I'm looking for those defining moments in your career where you felt like, hey, these were parts of the career that made me rethink and reshape.
Yeah, I mean, there were many, but one of the major ones was when we had this Russia-Ukraine war started in 2022. I mean, after COVID, some companies were a bit more ready to handle crisis, but still we were not ready. Yeah. And one of the major breakthrough moment happened when we had again energy crisis, raw material, and all the crises you can name it. At that time, you know that every company have their budgeting process. They somehow do the costing. They plan to do once in a year, but they have to do it again and again due to crisis. But then we had the crisis. Then we ask generally our finance or FP&A teams to let's rerun the cost just to test. Imagine for the bigger company, it's a big process. At that time, we realized the power of pricing with the salespeople because salespeople were already asking us, Ravneet, how much should we increase? How much should we do it? How much should we negotiate with the customers? At that time, we realized that we don't even need to simulate the cost. We don't have to wait for them. We can utilize our own simulations because the simulations are only getting better with the years because we use the same base for the cost. And then somehow we end up coming by saying, let's do this. Let's have these numbers using some indexes. We have available indexes around the lot of market intelligence companies provide the indexes. And then we somehow make sense out of it and make sure that we pass through this price to customer. So why it was breakthrough for me? Because I realized again that a single day delay in this negotiation can delay our profits. Until today, it's already been almost 6 years since COVID. We use the same approach, making sure that we really simulate our things, don't depend much on the cost, and making sure to provide some numbers as a support to the salespeople so that they make sense and customer believe in it, and then they are able to negotiate it. So, so all those moments help me to understand how pricing is so important to make sure not only in crisis, but also making sure that you are not have any leakage in the revenue. Because especially in B2B, Roy, it's a longer sales cycle and you have to make sure that you take the right decision at the right time.
No, exactly. Every delay can cost money.
Yeah.
It's that easy, right? So if costs are increasing and you haven't anticipated for it, or you can't raise prices quickly enough,
Yeah.
you're losing money quite
Yeah.
fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you also see that it's a feeling I have, but kind of curious if you align with that, that I feel like, as you said before, pre-COVID, once a year, maybe price updates. I feel like that's already progressing to at least twice or four times a year, so per quarter, and sometimes even more often now, and people start accepting that also in the B2B industry. Do you see the same thing?
If you mean pricing, then it's even more sometimes. Also depends on the crisis moment. Yeah. So I mean, what we normally try to follow, we try to keep a review on really making sure how is our price list in the company versus the market price, and we keep an eye almost on a very regular basis. We don't really have to wait, and it's not only one time, three times, five times. Sometimes you have to even do monthly in some products. Do you sometimes you do internal changes, but sometimes you do for the customer, because some projects you need to have some specific pricing. Yeah. So I would not say that there is not defined parameters that you have to do this much time. Obviously, you have to start in the initial of the year when we have inflation coming in, then you adjust some prices, which all companies I think do. But over the time, you keep checking the market situation. But if I talk about cost, generally in pricing, we don't talk about cost, which is a good thing actually. But I think I would really put that budgeting process is already becoming outdated. I would put it like this. Yeah. And
That's good
companies are
to
thinking now.
Yeah. No, it's very good to hear that that's becoming outdated, right? And
Yeah,
we're moving on to the more value-based and willingness to pay and
exactly.
market. So I think that's
Exactly.
a good thing. Ravneet, for the listeners to this podcast today, maybe, as I said, some of them are still at Excel. Maybe some of them might even be pricing manual. They don't even have yet a functional pricing team at the ready. If they have to begin somewhere, if you have to make pricing, you're this person, this young person that has to go into senior management and like, okay, we need to establish a professional pricing function, and we want to start the pricing maturity process. What would be your tips? Can you name a few tips? Where would you start? How would you create that business case of senior management?
I would focus first on the data, right? I will try to understand how currently they are making sure that they are consolidating their data, yeah, what system they have. And because the way we are moving towards AI, yeah, we are still not there yet. I mean, we are moving, there are a lot of things coming in, but still a lot of things people are testing. But if you need better system, you need data. Yeah. If you think that in 2 3 years, which is going to happen actually, in 2 to 5 years, depending on the company maturity, if they need to move further, I'm already putting the goal for them to from the scratch. So if they need to go there, then they need to make sure that the data is clean. I know that no, I think the data will never be clean. This is something we have to accept it. I mean, but still making sure that we get enough data from salespeople, by the way, the market dimension, market realities, and making sure that the system we are putting in place makes sense. So how would I do? I check the data, I check the system they have, and then I will make sure that we start something with cost plus at least. I mean, everyone is doing, but still some companies maybe still have one price list for all their customers. I will try to understand our customer nature. If the customer is commodity based, if the customer is value driven, if a customer is more they want product faster, they're happy. So to understand the value chain behind it, to segregate them, because I think often companies miss this customer segmentation, yeah, and they treat all the customers same. Yeah, but sometimes, not sometimes, it's always good to segment your customer depending on what they are looking for. I cannot put all the customer in one bracket. So you also have to take out some customers who believe in the value, and then if they believe in value, then means you can always find better products, better, you can always develop better products in that case. So you have to understand your value and the customer they are taking. And then obviously then I will really move to the system side. I will tell them to build some system, because without pricing governance, without systems in place, it's a big risk of what anyone is doing, even if pricing team or even if it's someone else. Product managers could be doing pricing. Some companies, we see, marketing team also have some pricing, which is a very old case. To make sure that we have some kind of rules, we make sure if it's a company who deals in multiple regions, to make sure that you have a multiple prices per region, per industry, per major category, and then some kind of rules to let sales have some negotiation power for the customer, but also to make sure that they get some kind of authority that they cannot sell below this price, because we don't want shocks in the end of the day. I don't want to get too shocked after 6 months when it will be invoiced. I will be happy to know right now if some customer is willing to pay me less, but I will want to review if I want to sell or not. Yeah, which is a major problem right now. And then once you have systems in place, I will even call CPQ. Now it's a systems every company is trying to implement, because CPQs are a first step into make sure that your systems are AI ready.
Mhm.
AI ready. We are not there yet. Yeah, AI ready. Yeah. And once you have systems like CPQ, it can help you to make sure that you have a system ready for having data, making sure you have all the rules. By the way, your last question, we have a lot of tools, a lot of different tools in the companies, but with systems like this, you can have everything in one system and making sure that all the silos are making sense.
Yep.
Yeah, this is how I would put it.
Yeah. So if I summarize this properly, you would say start at the basis, and the basis very specifically is making sure your data is in order.
Exactly.
Right? Right, to have it as clean, as good as possible. If you do project sales, make sure there is a tag for project. If it's a regular sales, it's regular sales. Make sure you have your segmentation in order, your customer segmentation, your product segmentation. Then make sure you have your price automation in place. If there's nothing there yet, start with a cost plus to make sure you at least can protect your margins. And the more data you have, the more complex you can go. So you can go to value selling, you can use elasticity, you can use other technologies.
Exactly.
AI is a very nice tool. All the other things are in place to bring it all together,
Exactly.
and assist you with that. Okay,
Exactly.
I think that makes sense. And then my question was, because I would like to link that to one of your previous answers, where you clearly stated that we need to involve sales, right? And you said you need to give corridors to sales to give them the room to negotiate. Would you say it's important as well to find a way in your system that the pricing specialist get the feedback back from sales? So why did we lose a project, or what, how many manual price overrides do we need to do, or how many price escalations are there?
This is super important to understand how much we are winning and how much we are losing. I call it internal market intelligence, because until I'm not getting the information, how is my price list feedback from the market, I will never be able to make a correct price list for the salespeople or for the customer. Yeah, so it's very important. Usually, we have a different CRM systems in place in the companies. And after you provide the proposal or quotation to the customers, you basically get the feedback. But I would say it's still a challenge, by the way, Roy, in the companies, because somehow, again, salespeople have so much to do that they say, okay, another thing to do. So you have to keep pushing them. But again, we say we know that we will not get all the data from them, but if I need to understand for a specific market how I'm doing, my first data is always this data, to understand how and what we are doing and which competition, if we have the competition information, they are doing, and to understand the difference in prices. And then you take one of those inputs in the discussions you do with the stakeholders, especially the sales and the commercial directors, and then you understand them that this is one of the points that we are losing, but then losing doesn't mean that we will decrease prices. Then we understand the strategy we have to have. Let's lose something, but or we focus on the value, right? So we have to take all the decision. So in as a summary, I would use this data as one of the data points alongside the 10 or 15 data points we have to see.
Yeah, exactly. I fully understand. And do I also hear you saying that you say there should be room to do the price experiments and then evaluate those, because that's how you learn what the willingness to pay in the end is, and where the room is for improvements and where not?
Exactly, exactly. And this is super important. Until pricing experts are not checking the market realities, or they have no data points to compare your reference price versus the market price, then you're losing the market reality. Yeah, it's
Makes
super
sense.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, and Ravneet, we're almost getting to the end already.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're
Yeah.
going very fast, and time is moving fast. And I really like the conversation we have going. I always end with with a question where I feel like we need to think about a bit. And that is, if we talk now currently B2B pricing, let's keep it a bit more specific also in your area of expertise. If you have to name the three main challenges right now in the B2B pricing landscape, what would you say those are?
One of the biggest thing I would say is execution problem. When we talk about that, we have a lot of tools in place in all the companies or in most of the companies, depending on the size. The problem is that it's not going to the customer. It's not going to the sales. They are unable to use it. So it's the time we step back and understand what all we need and what is making sense and making sure that salespeople understand it.
So the execution from the prices do not reach sales or the customer in the end.
Yes. This is the biggest issue we are discovering. And in those things, the pricing role is changing a bit or realizing to be changing a bit to move a bit focus towards soft skills. Until now, it was only about, we normally heard pricing nerds. Nerds means mostly hard skills, yeah. But now it's always the need how you can communicate what you have and to make sure that they use it.
Yeah. And how would you do that?
To train, to provide trainings to talk to them more often, to make sure that they understand the system behind it and to also help them in the negotiations. If they are not using the tool you have made for more than 3-6 months, it's time to take it out. It's of no use. You will be happy probably. Maybe you have made a Ferrari out of it, but if no one is using it, it will be
Is
in
he?
garage. Yeah,
Yeah,
there is
true.
no value of it. Again, you have to use the value mindset around it. Check the things what they're using. If then, even if you know that it's the best tool, but then it's time to train them. Sometimes we say we are busy, we have crises, we have this, we have this. We understand, but again, if they're not using it, then sorry, it's not being used properly, and then something to think about it. So it's the biggest mistake, and I'm realizing this going to various people. Somehow I talked recently, and they have the same concern that they have so much in place for some companies. Some companies have nothing, some companies have so much, and they have this problem that what should we do with this?
I think a very valid one here as well, what I can add on top of it is what we see happening a lot as well is I think 99% of the listeners probably have worked with Grok,
Yeah,
ChatGPT, Claude, what write any AI tool. And they use it to write an email, to do a quick analysis, whatever. And people are very good in making a proof of concept, an analysis that they think, oh, the whole team can use this and let's use it, but it's done in their own private environment or in the company environment. But then to make it applicable for everybody, you need to scale it up. It needs to be integrated in more tools. Everybody needs to be able to work from it. And this is where the real challenge comes from, because then a lot more things come into play. And this is where we see a lot of initiatives don't make it. And I think that's another thing as well, right? So you need to make sure that it's well integrated in your IT stack, in your tech stack, that everything works well, but also very closely monitors what are we actually using, as you say, like, do we have a tool because we need to have a tool, or do we have a tool because it's actually gaining us value? So I like the tip on your side is do evaluate your tech stack and and go sit down with your sales and ask them, do you know why we charge this price for this product?
exactly. I understand. Sometimes pricing functions are mostly global headquarters based, and we have salespeople around the world. And I understand with all the cost pressure we have in the companies, it's sometimes difficult to travel to all the location. But put it in focus, because if they are not knowing what you are making, I mean, they can have 100 meetings online. I mean, I am not saying that it's working for all of us. As a humans, we are evolving. But we all need this in-person touch. Until you don't speak to them, sit with them, I mean, at least with some of them, try to make this, because it's like a big change management. This is actually my second part actually. Yeah, the second thing I would like to focus on is change management. Sometimes we think change management is we all know it's difficult, yeah, as a human way. But guys, it's a real time. We humans are already under so much stress with everything happening around the world. Life has changed since COVID. We all have to accept it. And this is the way when we implement some tool, for them is just another tool. But before you implement something, try to understand the real need of it, and just don't just make a design without their involvement. It's a time we take change management very seriously, because 70% of projects get failed. It's a huge number. Imagine the money we are losing just because of change management, and people are still not talking about it so much, which I think is still they think another topic, change management. No, a super important topic. And I'm personally very much working on this topic since a while now, and it's very close to me. And I also apply this in my personal life. And I can tell you that I'm really pushing this part wherever I meet now, to take this human part in the front, then just making a strategy or systems and making sure that they will use it. They will not use it. Make them a part of it.
Yeah, I think I do have to say I've done I don't know how many implementations, but I can tell you the change management procedure, having everybody involved, making sure everybody understands what you're doing, makes or breaks the whole project. I can't agree more with you there. So I'm glad you're actually mentioning it because you need to bring everybody on board and need to specifically sales, but also finance, also marketing, also product. Everybody needs to be there, the executives, because it is across all departments.
Yeah, yeah, and make them feel involved. When you implement a project, probably you will do a big kickoff, and everyone will be involved. Then no one talk to them. Make a habit to be in touch with them. I know it's difficult. Again, we all have a lot of things to do, but make a habit to speak to them, be regular, at least with the people who you think can be ambassadors of the regions. Make them feel a part of it. Tell them, we are making it for you. If you have anything to say, let us know. And this is how we are personally doing it in the project I'm working currently, and I'm really testing it how it works. Probably we speak sometime later how the results will come, and we are really making sure that they make a feel a part of it. Otherwise, if tomorrow I go to them and tell them use the system, I don't think so they will use it properly.
I agree. I agree. So the first point, execution. Second
Yep.
one,
Change management.
change management.
Yeah.
What's the third one?
Third is more toward geopolitics. According to my understanding of how I learn the past, the world order is changing. We are moving towards multipolar world. And history tell us as a humans, whenever we are in the multipolar world, it normally goes some years. I will not put the numbers. Last time it was before the World War II. Between the World War One and World War Two, we had the multipolar world somehow, and it was a big crisis. If you read the history, meaning we all as a companies need to be ready for the crisis for a while. Normally, I'm a bit optimistic person, but we have to accept the realities. Meaning, we all need to make sure that we have hedging for a lot of things we need, making sure that we have contracts in place for a lot of things, and we also have some kind of forward-looking mindset. Yeah, we cannot rely on the past data. Again, data has been a focal point of our topic right now. Data is past data. We can learn from past, which is important, but right now all of us have to make sure that our simulations, our forward looking kind of cost or simulations are making more sense, because whenever some crisis happened, our past data will not help us a lot. It will help, but will not make a lot of sense, especially in the B2B world where the is a bigger sales cycle. So I would focus more on the strategic part, on the pricing strategic part, which is our main job, to making us be ready for a bit of forward-looking mindset. So whenever some crisis happened, I should know where is the impact. Even if it's 80%, simulations will not help you a lot. I mean to say simulation will not be perfect, I mean to say, but still you have an idea what is the real impact for me. If I have no clue of the impact, then I'm just waiting for the crisis.
Yeah, but would you also say, or I think there is a challenge because how would you simulate for a crisis yet to happen? Because we do not know what the next crisis is going to be.
I would put it in a way, I will check all my cost, and I will check all the top 5, 10 major costs a company pay, and making sure I have some kind of backup in place. If, like, I would say supply chain backups mostly, because nowadays even all the countries are making their backups in place. We are in the world of near shoring or French shoring or a polar kind of world. So if I see that I source one raw material from, for say, China, I need to make sure that I have a China one policy, meaning I have some other raw material sourcing pattern. If I don't have that, I am in a problem. So I need to also understand all the cost impact. Yeah, what is going to be my cost right now? Okay, if I'm sourcing from one region, I probably pay less, but if I have to source from other region, then how much I need to pay more, though I am ready for it. So it's also good for me, so my supply chains will never be impacted, and we all know how supply chains have been since last 6 years, and it will not going to be stopped. So be a bit more towards strategic point of view, and we all know that pricing is more strategy, than execution. Is execution there, but it's more strategic work, planning way well in advance. If something is happening tomorrow, I should be well prepared.
Yes. Thank you for that part, Ravneet. I think it helps us putting into perspectives and it helps us understanding what steps to be taken, and how to be prepared, or could we possibly be prepared for a next crisis if we want to handle that well. Ravneet, for the listeners right now, can they reach out to you if they heard something that is interesting in this conversation, or they would like to have a bit more of a deep dive with you personally? How can they reach out to you?
Yeah, I can be reached out on LinkedIn. I have a account there. I'm quite active, and also if some of you are based in Netherlands or maybe wider Europe, we are also building kind of a community inside here, where the idea is to really make sure that everyone is welcome. Meaning wherever part of pricing journey you are, to really talk what we do, and it can basically help you to understand the ground realities. So I am looking forward to speak to you to hear your story, which I always like to do it. Yeah,
Great,
thanks.
Ravneet. Really
Yeah,
looking forward.
yeah,
I would always say the bigger community with pricing specialists there are, I think we're all facing the same challenges most of the time. And it's always good to have some outside views of the challenges we have, and be able to bounce ideas off each other. So I would highly recommend everybody to participate and join up in this group. So thanks for that,
yeah.
Rafi.
Most welcome. It has been a pleasure because somehow when you have these kind of communities, you meet some interesting people that you had no idea before. And I am looking forward to hear some more interesting people and their stories. Huh? Not only pricing, by the way, more about life also.
Yet again, I want to really thank you for being part of this series. I really liked your contribution, and let's hope we meet soon again, and can have some more discussions into detail.
Pleasure, Roy. It was really nice talking to you. And you're right, it went very fast. So looking forward to speak to you soon. Thanks a
Okay.
lot.
Thank you very much, Ravneet. Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Bye.
Bye bye.